It's 3 a.m. on Valentine's Day 2013. Oscar Pistorius hears a noise in his bathroom. He grabs his gun, approaches the locked door, and fires 4 shots. Then he calls for help, screaming that he shot an intruder. But here's what doesn't make sense. He never once checked if his girlfriend was still lying next to him in bed. Think about that for a second. You hear a noise at 3 a.m. Your first instinct isn't to look at the person sleeping right next to you. Your first instinct is to grab a gun and start shooting. This is the story of how the world's most inspiring athlete became its most confusing killer. Before we dive into one of sport's most shocking criminal cases, you need to understand who Oscar Pistorius was before everything went wrong. This wasn't just another athlete who fell from grace. Born in 1986 in South Africa, Oscar came into this world already facing impossible odds. He was born with a condition called fibular hemimelia. Basically, he was missing key bones in both legs. When he was just 11 months old, doctors made a devastating decision that would define his entire life. They amputated both his legs below the knee. Most parents would have been crushed by this news. But Oscar's mother, Sheila, refused to let her son be defined by what he couldn't do. She raised him to believe that his prosthetic legs weren't a disability. They were just different equipment. And it worked. By his teenage years, Oscar was dominating in rugby, water polo, and tennis. But everything changed when he suffered a serious rugby injury in 2003. While recovering, his trainer introduced him to running with prosthetic blades. It was like watching someone discover their superpower. Within months of putting on his first racing prosthetics, Oscar was breaking records that had stood for years. These weren't just any prosthetics. Oscar ran on carbon fiber blades called cheetah legs, J-shaped springs that stored and released energy with every step. They made him look like something out of a science fiction movie, which is exactly how he got his nickname, the Blade Runner. By 2004, just 1 year after starting to run competitively, Oscar was at the Paralympics in Athens. He didn't just compete, he dominated. He won gold in the 200 meters and set a world record doing it. But Oscar had bigger dreams than just Paralympic glory. He wanted to prove that amputees could compete against able-bodied athletes and win. This was unheard of. The sport world wasn't ready for someone like Oscar Pistorius. What happened next was a legal and athletic battle that would define Oscar's early career. In 2007, the International Association of Athletics Federations, basically the world's top track and field organization, banned Oscar from competing against non-disabled athletes. Their reasoning? His prosthetic legs gave him an unfair advantage. Think about that for a second. The sports world was literally arguing that having no legs was better than having legs, but Oscar wasn't backing down. He took the case to court and hired scientists to prove that his prosthetics didn't make him superhuman. The testing showed something remarkable, that his blades did store energy. Oscar also faced massive disadvantages. He couldn't push off starting blocks like other runners. He had no ankle flexibility. He had to work 25% harder just to change direction. In May 2008, the Court of Arbitration for Sport ruled in Oscar's favor. The ban was lifted. Oscar Pistorius was free to chase his Olympic dream. What followed was one of the most inspiring stories in sports history. In 2011, Oscar ran 45.07 seconds in the 400 meters, fast enough to qualify for the World Championships. He became the first amputee to run in a World Championship final and won a silver medal as part of South Africa's relay team. Then came 2012, the London Olympics. On August 4, 2012, Oscar Pistorius stepped onto the track at the Olympic Stadium and made history. He was the first double amputee to compete in Olympic Games. The entire world was watching, as this young man from South Africa proved that the human spirit could overcome any obstacle. He didn't just participate, he made it to the semifinals of the 400 meters. But Oscar wasn't done. 3 weeks later at the Paralympic Games in the same stadium, he reminded everyone why he was still the king of Paralympic sport. He won gold in the 400 meters and set a Paralympic record. Oscar Pistorius was at the peak of his powers. He had sponsorship deals worth millions. He was dating a beautiful model named Riva Steenkamp. He was inspiring millions of people around the world. Everything was perfect. And that's exactly when it all started to fall apart. February 14th, 2013. Valentine's Day. Oscar Pistorius and Riva Steenkamp were spending a quiet evening at his luxury home in Pretoria, South Africa. Riva was a successful model and paralegal who had been dating Oscar for a few months. By all accounts, they seemed happy together. But something went terribly wrong that night. According to Oscar's version of events, he woke up in the early morning hours and heard a noise in the bathroom. Thinking it was an intruder, he grabbed his 9mm pistol and approached the locked bathroom door. Without checking if Riva was still in bed, without calling out a warning, he fired 4 shots through the door. When he broke down the door, he found Riva's body. She had been shot in the hip, arm, and head. She died almost instantly. But here's where Oscar's story starts to unravel. Neighbors reported hearing a woman screaming before the gunshots. Phone records showed that Riva had been awake and using her phone just before she died. The bathroom window was open, and police found it would have been impossible for an intruder to climb through it. Most damaging of all, Oscar never checked if Riva was in bed before shooting. When Oscar Pistorius walked into that Pretoria courtroom in March 2014, the entire world was watching. This wasn't just a murder trial, it was the destruction of a global icon. The prosecution painted a picture of a controlling, violent man who had killed his girlfriend in a fit of rage. They brought forward evidence of previous incidents with guns, including firing a weapon in a restaurant and through a car's sunroof. The defense stuck to Oscar's story. This was a tragic accident caused by his intense fear of crime and his vulnerability as a disabled person living in crime-ridden South Africa. For months, the world watched as Oscar broke down in tears, vomited in court, and removed his prosthetic legs to show the jury how vulnerable he felt that night. But the evidence kept mounting against him. Why didn't he check if Riva was in bed? Why didn't he call security first? Why did he approach the danger instead of escaping? And why did neighbors hear arguing before the shooting? On September 12, 2014, Judge Thokozela Masipa delivered her verdict. Oscar Pistorius was found not guilty of murder, but guilty of culpable homicide, essentially manslaughter. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Many people thought this was too lenient. The prosecution certainly did. They appealed the verdict, arguing that Judge Masipa had made a legal error. In November 2015, the Supreme Court of Appeal agreed. They overturned the culpable homicide conviction and found Oscar guilty of murder. His sentence was increased to 6 years, then later to 13 years and 5 months. The Blade Runner, who had once inspired the world, was now just another prisoner. Today, Oscar Pistorius was released on parole in January 2024, after serving nearly 9 years behind bars. But the questions about that Valentine's Day night in 2013 remain unanswered. Was this really a tragic case of mistaken identity? Or was it cold-blooded murder? Did Oscar's disability and fear make him act irrationally, or was that just a convenient excuse? And how do we reconcile the inspiring athlete who broke down barriers with the man who killed his girlfriend? Oscar showed the world that disability doesn't have to mean inability. He proved that with determination and technology, humans can overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. But he also showed us that inspiration and achievement don't make someone immune to the worst aspects of human nature. Riva Steenkamp would have turned 40 this year. She never got the chance to build the career she dreamed of or start the family she wanted. Her mother, June Steenkamp, has said she forgives Oscar, but will never forget what he took from their family. Oscar's athletic records still stand. His achievements can't be erased, but they're forever tainted by what happened on February 14, 2013. The man who proved that prosthetics could make you faster, stronger, and better couldn't fix the one thing that mattered most: his character. What do you think really happened that Valentine's Day night in Pretoria? Was Oscar Pistorius a hero who made a tragic mistake? Or was he a killer who fooled the world? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Pros to Foes, where we tell the stories of athletes who went from inspiring millions to shocking the world. Because sometimes the biggest falls come from the greatest heights.